The story of the Chinese farmer. Once upon a time, in a small village in China, there lived a humble farmer. His name was Liang, and he worked hard every day to tend to his crops and provide for his family. Despite his simple life, Liang was known throughout the village for his kind heart and gentle spirit. Every morning, Liang would wake up before the sun and head out to his fields to begin his day's work. As he walked, he would hum a soft melody to himself, finding comfort in the rhythm of his steps and the sound of the birds chirping in the trees. Despite the many challenges he faced as a farmer, Liang remained steadfast and unwavering in his commitment to his land and his family. His resilience and determination inspired all who knew him, and his gentle rhythm brought a sense of peace and harmony to the world around him. One day, as Liang was working in his fields, his horse suddenly broke free from its stable and ran away. Liang's neighbors were quick to offer their condolences, saying how sorry they were for his loss. But Liang simply smiled and replied, "Who knows what is good and what is bad?" His neighbors were surprised by Liang's response, thinking that he must be in denial about the severity of the situation. But Liang remained calm and collected, trusting that everything would work out in the end. Days turned into weeks, and Liang continued to work his fields without his horse. His neighbors shook their heads, convinced that he was bound to fail without his trusty animal by his side. But Liang remained focused, finding new ways to tend to his crops and carry out his daily tasks. Then, one day, Liang's horse returned to the village, and it brought with it a wild stallion. Liang's neighbors were amazed and congratulated him on his good fortune, saying how lucky he was to have gained a new horse. But Liang simply smiled and replied, "Who knows what is good and what is bad?" Once again, his neighbors were puzzled by his response, but Liang knew that the situation was not as clear-cut as it seemed. He accepted the new horse with gratitude, but also recognized that with it came new challenges and responsibilities. As the days turned into months, Liang continued to face the ups and downs of life with a steady rhythm and a calm perspective. His neighbors began to see the wisdom in his approach, and they learned to trust in the uncertainty of the world, knowing that good things can come from unexpected places. When the neighbors saw that Liang was not upset by the loss of his horse, they were surprised. They had always considered the horse to be a valuable asset, and its loss would be seen as a great misfortune. When the neighbors expressed their sympathies, Liang simply smiled and replied, "Who knows what is good and what is bad?" The neighbors were puzzled by this response. They thought that Liang was not taking the loss of his horse seriously. But Liang knew better. He understood that life is unpredictable, and sometimes what appears to be a misfortune may actually turn out to be a blessing in disguise. He had faith that everything happens for a reason, and that there is a larger plan at work. The neighbors shook their heads in disbelief and continued to pity Liang for his misfortune. But Liang remained calm and nonchalant. He continued to work his fields and tend to his daily tasks without the help of his horse. Days turned into weeks, and as time passed, something unexpected happened. A herd of wild horses suddenly appeared in the valley near Liang's farm. The horses were strong and healthy, and they belonged to no one. When the neighbors saw the herd, they ran to tell Liang the good news. Liang was surprised by the news, but he did not get overly excited. Instead, he simply smiled and said, "Who knows what is good and what is bad?" The neighbors were confused. They did not understand why Liang was not more excited about the arrival of the wild horses. But Liang knew that the arrival of the wild horses was not necessarily a good thing. With more horses came more responsibility, and more work. He understood that the arrival of the wild horses was not a clear-cut good or bad event, but rather something that needed to be managed carefully. In the end, Liang's nonchalant attitude towards the events of his life proved to be a source of wisdom and strength. He understood that sometimes what appears to be a misfortune is actually a blessing, and that good and bad are often intertwined. The next day, the farmer wakes up to a surprise: his horse has returned, and it's not alone. 3 wild horses have followed it back to the farm. The farmer is elated, and his neighbors come by once again to congratulate him on his newfound wealth. They believe that he has struck it rich and is now a lucky man. However, the farmer remains calm and composed, explaining that he views the situation as neither good nor bad. He knows that the horses could be a blessing, but they could also be a curse. He realizes that anything can happen in life, and it's best to remain detached and neutral to whatever happens. The neighbors are impressed and envious of the farmer's newfound wealth. They believe that he has hit the jackpot, and they're envious of his good fortune. They come by to congratulate him and remark on how lucky he is to have gained such riches. They think that he must be very pleased with himself, and they ask him how he plans to use his new horses. However, the farmer remains detached and unimpressed, explaining that he views the situation as neither good nor bad. He knows that the horses could be a blessing, but they could also be a curse. He understands that anything can happen in life, and it's best to remain neutral and detached from whatever happens. The farmer remains nonchalant, despite the neighbors' envy and admiration. He explains that he views the situation as neither good nor bad. He understands that the horses could be a blessing, but they could also be a curse. He knows that anything can happen in life, and it's best to remain neutral and detached from whatever happens. The farmer's attitude seems odd to the neighbors, who can't understand how he can remain so calm in the face of such good fortune. They think that he must be a fool for not taking advantage of the situation and using his new horses to enrich himself. But the farmer knows better. He realizes that things are not always what they seem, and that good fortune can turn to misfortune in the blink of an eye. He remains calm and collected, knowing that his long-term perspective on life will ultimately lead him to success and happiness. The farmer's son is excited about the new horses and wants to try to tame one of the wild ones. Despite his father's warning that it might not be a good idea, he tries to ride one of the horses. Unfortunately, the horse bucks and throws him off, causing him to break his leg. The neighbors are quick to offer their condolences, telling the farmer how sorry they are for his misfortune. They remark on how unlucky the farmer's son is and how tragic it is that he won't be able to help his father with the farm work for some time. But the farmer responds in the same nonchalant manner as before. He acknowledges the situation but does not become overly upset or discouraged. Instead, he reminds the neighbors that life is unpredictable and that what may seem like a misfortune could turn out to be a blessing in disguise. The farmer's son is indeed unable to help with the farm work, but he does not sit idly by. Instead, he learns to appreciate the slower pace of life and takes up reading and other activities that he had never had time for before. He develops new skills and interests that will serve him well in the future. The farmer's long-term perspective on life allows him to see beyond the immediate challenges and setbacks and to focus on the opportunities that lie ahead. He knows that every situation has a silver lining, and it's up to him to find it. The neighbors come to console the farmer, expressing their sympathy for his son's injury. They remark that it was unfortunate that the wild horses brought more trouble than good, and that it was a stroke of bad luck. However, the farmer once again responds with his characteristic nonchalance. He says that he views it as neither good nor bad and that it's just a fact of life that things happen. He adds that he doesn't know what the outcome will be, and neither do his neighbors. The farmer's response perplexes his neighbors, and they leave without saying much more. Despite his son's injury, the farmer remains unfazed. He continues with his daily routine, working on his farm and taking care of his son as best he can. His neighbors continue to come to visit him, but they find it increasingly difficult to understand his nonchalant attitude towards his misfortunes. The farmer explains to them that he has learned to accept life's ups and downs, knowing that everything happens for a reason. He believes that one should not be too quick to judge a situation as good or bad, but rather let it play out and see what comes of it. The farmer's perspective on life begins to rub off on his neighbors, and they start to see things in a new light. They realize that they too have been too quick to judge situations as good or bad without taking a step back and examining the bigger picture. In the end, the farmer's son recovers from his injury, and life on the farm returns to normal. The neighbors continue to come and visit, but this time they do so with a new appreciation for the farmer's wisdom and his ability to find the silver lining in every situation. As the war broke out, all the able-bodied young men were drafted to fight. The farmer's son, who had a broken leg, was exempted from the draft. The neighbors, once again, viewed this as a fortunate turn of events. The neighbors were relieved that the farmer's son couldn't be drafted due to his broken leg. They saw it as another lucky break for the farmer. Once again, the farmer remained unfazed by the turn of events. He explained to his neighbors that he did not see it as either good or bad, but rather just another event in the ebb and flow of life. The farmer's calm and steady perspective on life left his neighbors amazed and curious about his wisdom. The story of the Chinese farmer is a powerful reminder of the importance of adopting a long-term perspective on life and the ability to find the silver lining in every situation. The protagonist, a Chinese farmer, experiences a series of events that are perceived as either good or bad by his neighbors. When his horse runs away, his neighbors view it as a great misfortune. However, the farmer responds by saying that he views it as neither good nor bad. The next day, the horse returns, accompanied by 3 wild horses. The neighbors view it as a stroke of luck, but the farmer responds by saying that he views it as neither good nor bad. Later, when the farmer's son attempts to tame one of the wild horses and breaks his leg, the neighbors view it as another misfortune. Again, the farmer responds by saying that he views it as neither good nor bad. Finally, a war breaks out, and all able-bodied young men are drafted to fight. However, the farmer's son cannot be drafted due to his broken leg. The neighbors view this as a stroke of luck, but the farmer responds by saying that he views it as neither good nor bad. The story emphasizes the importance of maintaining a nonchalant attitude towards the events that unfold in our lives, and how such an attitude can help us find the silver lining in every situation. In essence, the farmer's response to each event is a powerful reminder that there is always something to be gained from every circumstance, whether it is perceived as good or bad. In conclusion, the story of the Chinese farmer highlights the importance of adopting a long-term perspective on life and the ability to find the silver lining in every situation. The farmer's nonchalant response to both good and bad events allowed him to remain balanced and objective, always seeking the positive in any circumstance. This story teaches us the valuable lesson that we should not get too attached to the ups and downs of life but rather maintain an equanimous outlook and look for the opportunities that come our way. By doing so, we can find the silver lining in even the most challenging situations and ultimately achieve success and happiness in life. Thank you for listening to the story of the Chinese farmer. I hope you enjoyed it and were inspired by its message. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button if you did. We appreciate your support.